So what I want to do now, we spend a lot more time in the declaration in this presentation. I'm going to go through the declaration kind of word by word in some ways in the famous paragraph, okay? We're going to start out here. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Okay, what's the first word you think of when I say self-evident? Is obvious a word that comes to mind? It's obvious, okay? They're self-evident truths that comply with the laws of nature and of nature's God. Gravity is a self-evident truth. It's obvious. And guess what? Gravity couldn't care less how many laws are legislated against it to say gravity shall not exist. Guess what? Gravity does exist, and it won't yield or won't change because of legislative action. So there's some self-evident truths out there. That all men are created equal. And here's the question. Well, what do you mean all men are created equal? I used to have brown hair, now it's turning gray. Okay, we have different colors of hair, we're all different sizes, different weight. How are we all born equal? What does that mean? Well, we're born equal in our rights. Okay? That's how we're born equal, in our natural rights. That they are endowed by their Creator. What's the word endow mean? Endow means to give a gift. So we're endowed by our Creator. We're given a godly gift, a gift from God. Okay? Make sure we know the source is God, not government. With certain unalienable rights. Unalienable rights are those gifts from God. Positive rights are granted rights, created rights, sometimes called vested rights, that are given by man or government. But these natural inalienable rights, they're given to us by God. And of course, if man, who says, oh, I have this positive right, I have this created right, I have this vested right, gives those rights, is the person who endows us with rights, then they can take them away. It's essential that we make sure God stays in that. Okay? That among these, meaning there are other God-given rights besides the three that are listed here, are life. God's greatest gift to mankind is life. He's in charge of the giving of life. All right? Liberty, next to the gift of life itself, the right to be free, to choose, to make choices we want to for our own version of pursuing happiness is what it's all about. To be able to choose, to act, not be restrained by others. And the pursuit of happiness. And it's interesting, we're going to spend some time on this one. The right to pursue happiness, not the right to possess happiness. Remember? Rights are the inputs, not the outputs. It's the opportunity, not the results, not the outcomes. This phrase recognizes that no man can demand happiness from any other man or from the government that man creates. But man can demand and defend his right to pursue happiness against others who would inhibit his pursuit by infringing on his rights. In other words, men are free to do, become, strive, invent, think, dream, to do whatever they want to. Okay? But they don't have the right to possess happiness at the expense of another man. Now, with life, liberty, and property, I challenge you, when it said that among these are life, liberty, and property, I challenge you to find any legitimate right that comes from God, doesn't require anyone else to give it to you or sacrifice something for you in order to have it. A legitimate right that is not directly tied to life, liberty, or property. I think the founders are very inspired, the writings of the founders are very inspired, that really things do come down to life, liberty, and property. Okay? So, moving on, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. We've kind of hit this peripherally, but let's look at this. God gave man his rights, correct? Man made government to protect those rights. Man is superior to government and the ruler over it. Okay? There's another interesting inference in this phrase because it says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. The inference is, without government, we won't have a security of our rights. Is that true? Yeah. Just like John Locke said a couple slides ago, we need to have law. Where there is no law, there is no freedom. It's important that we have government, a proper amount, and only a proper amount, limited government, but it's important that we do have government in order to protect those rights. Otherwise, we live in anarchy. Okay? Where might is right. Okay. Lastly, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. It seems to me like we've gone through these parts in the Declaration almost every presentation. Maybe it's just in my mind a lot, but deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed is very, very important. And we're going to get into more detail later on this, but as an individual, I can only do certain things using force. So, I, as an individual, can only give to government a power that I have. I have to choose to give it to him, but I have to have the power in the first place to give it to him at all. I can't give to government a power I myself don't have, because government derives their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay? So, A lot of times we'll talk about the Declaration. Some people say, oh, look, that's just a philosophical document. It's just an idea. It's just kind of a declaration of independence from Britain. It has nothing to do with our government. Well, let's look at that a little bit, because I think it's important. I hold that the Declaration is the foundation upon which the house of the Constitution is built. If you don't have a foundation, you don't have the house, okay? Let's look at some ideas. Samuel Adams poses this idea. Before the formation of this Constitution, this Declaration of Independence was received and ratified by all the states in the Union and has never been disannulled. Okay? So he's saying the states in the Union ratified it, just like they ratified the Constitution. So there's some legitimacy to it. Let's look at the Constitution itself. Does the Constitution talk about the Declaration? If it does, then our supreme law of the land is legitimizing our Declaration of Independence. And it does. Article 7, the very last part of the Constitution, says, done in convention by the unanimous consent of the states present, the 17th day of September in the year of our Lord 1787, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 12th. So September 17th, 1787, and they're saying in that year, in the 12th year, so 11 years back from 1787 is what date? 1776. That, according to the founders, according to the Constitution itself, our rule of law says that's when our country was born, in 1776. The bearing of the Declaration of Independence is the birth date, according to the founders, according to the Constitution of our nation. So it does have some bearing. It is important. It is tied into our Constitution and our American form of government. There's a Supreme Court case back in 1897 that says this: the Constitution is but the body and the letter of which the Declaration of Independence is the thought and the spirit. And it's always safe to read the letter of the Constitution in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence. No duty rests more imperatively upon the courts than the enforcement of those constitutional provisions intended to secure that equality of rights which is the foundation of free government. Okay? So the Supreme Court has ruled, and I don't like to quote the Supreme Court too often, but they're right on in this case, and I like the way they put this, that the Constitution is the body and the letter of the Declaration is the spirit. And succinctly, Chief Justice Warren Burger says this: the Declaration of Independence was the promise. The Constitution was the fulfillment. Okay? So we never have to be nervous, like that Supreme Court case said, we never have to be nervous of interpreting the Constitution through the eyes and through the lens of the Declaration, because the Declaration is that foundation. It's a philosophical and spiritual foundation of our nation. And to cut it off and say, oh, we're just going to look at the laws, is to cut off why the laws are put together in the first place. It's fundamentally important. It's not just another document. It's foundational to our country. Okay?